I don't always have guests on the program, but when I do, it's men of great caliber, caliber being somewhat of a pun, U.S. Marine Corps combat veterans, and we kind of like to run it like that. We're going to run the disclaimer. The opinions expressed by the Reverend are his own and no one else's, except possibly Kacy's. They are adjudicated thought crime in all jurisdictions. Consider yourself warned. They're coming from the heart. They're guided by the mind. They're guaranteed to choke you with the truth, God. Boys and girls, once again, it is time for the Sunday sermon. Glad we got you guys on board. Brother Kacy in the house, man. Going to be reading some excerpts from the book. Going to get everybody in on the drum roll right here. You guys know the drill. I'm not going to make him do it. It's his obvious calm exterior. Don't want to betray the demeanor.
No, I've been cultivating it for years.
Oh man, glad everybody made it in. We got Roman from Opium Tales, the mighty Bonsai Bonsa. We got my beloved Oksana on board. Sergey says hello because Russia. It's a wonderful thing, man. Joel Allen Jackson on board. We got Joey, the Sultan of Sarcasm. Carrie on board. Emmy. Wow, man, we got the whole crew. Aaron tuned in from that remote location, probably at least 60, 70 feet from here. Dennis Weimer on board. We're going to jump right into it, man. I'm going to spare you a lot of the leads because we all know why you're here. We got the main man in the house. Kacy Tellessen going to be doing a little bit of an interview. He's going to be reading some excerpts from the book. Freaks of a Feather. Go ahead and hold the cover up for him one time, just in case they've forgotten. We go ahead and give them that little bit to work on. I know you guys have been seeing it. You've been hearing the excerpts for the past couple of weeks. You're going to get to hear it straight from the source today, man. We are happy to have him on board. Kacy and I have been around for a minute now up here in the inland Northwest, meeting under some inauspicious circumstances. And we'll leave it at that. It's not a, statute of limitations kind of thing, but no, it's actually really, really cool. You will also know him as half of the Nordic Smoke Barbecue crew. Like I said, man, longtime friends of myself, longtime friends of the program. And hell, man, I'm just happy to have him on board to actually give you some insight of his own experience as a Marine combat vet coming out of Iraq. Little insight on the book, what went into it. And hell, man, we're just going to roll. We go ahead and knock the bumper music down, and we'll just jump right into this thing, man, with both feet. First of all, Kacy, you'd be good enough to give these guys a little bit of background. I mean, they've got 100 interviews that they can read, but half of my fans can't read, first of all, and the half that can, rather than go through like digging through the interview process, if you could give them a little insight as to where the origins of this book came from. Is a pretty dark place in your own life, and maybe a form of therapy for you. If you could just give them a little insight into what went into this.
Yeah, so the writing process started one night. I was very close to committing suicide, and I told myself that the first thing I have to do before I can go through this is put it all down on paper. I think my family deserved to know. People deserve to know, why I am the way I am. At the time, I was feeling basically like I was poisonous, that anyone around me was going to be infected by this poison. So I twisted the service aspect of my character in thinking that this was like a form of service to kill myself. And so that night I didn't do it. And then that morning I started writing. And I first started writing. I couldn't do it anything other than first person present tense, because I needed that super close lens where I had no room to back off and actually examine my thought process. But yeah, things just changed, after the first few sessions, I started feeling a little lighter, I started feeling like I could actually communicate. My marriage was on the verge of collapsing right before that happened too, which all just bled into everything. And yeah, things were just different. My wife just told me, I don't know what the hell you're doing, keep doing it. I just kept writing, kept reading. And, about 10 years later, that's what we have now.
Man, that's, again, coming from a really, really dark origin. but it wound up saving your marriage, wound up saving your life ultimately. Yeah. I'm going to venture a guess that for those of you guys that have read the book, and I know there's a lot of you guys out there that have purchased a copy and read it, I think probably that therapeutic value is going to translate into a lot of other Marines, a lot of other combat vets, and so hopefully this testament that saved your life is gonna work going forward to save the lives of others, man.
That's so.
Yeah. It's kind of odd that you didn't even think about that as a consideration, first going forward, and now you're looking at the finished product and you're like, wow, man, okay, this is a legacy, this is a testament, that can affect other people's lives.
Yeah, I think anytime you're like making a piece of art, I don't think you can think in those big, broad implications. I think that's going to get in the way of the work. So if you're doing something like this, it has to be real, and you have to be totally invested into it, and you can't really let those like, oh, this might help someone else. Like, it started off as like, this is just a suicide note, and then people's reactions to it, you're like, oh shit, this might actually be something here.
Yeah. Well, okay, if we can take it a little dark, what were the pains of the adjustment process for you coming home that brought you to that point where you were experiencing that sense of worthlessness, when you were experiencing, the problems on the domestic front? What particular aspects of the adjustment between coming home and readjusting to civilian life really took you there?
It was a lot of just isolation, you have all these, these experiences are fresh, you know what I mean? And then at the time I still had friends who were serving, so a lot of them actually went to Afghanistan right after. And you just like, what was it all for? You know what I mean? Like, what the fuck just happened? And you're amongst all these people that they have no clue what you went through. Most of them don't even want to look at it, which is part of the motivation for the book, is like, look at this, look at what's being done in your name. Yeah. And just a lot of anger, a lot of unwarranted anger, I think, but like a lot of just projected, like anytime I heard someone complaining about anything, it's just like, you have no idea. Like, you have no idea. And so, and that, it's not really fair, but that's the way you think, you just like, none of you know what the true reality is, and that's what you feel like. You feel like you are the only one that's glimpsed, like, peered behind the veil and like, okay, this is what it all boils down to. Everything else, this is just fluff.
Yeah. Now it's almost like 180 degree, because again, looking into your background, not just from the book, from interviews where you've discussed it, that it's almost a polarity from where you were going into the service, going into the Marine Corps, because you wanted that hero's journey. You were looking at the Iliad. You wanted to do something great with your life, and it seems, and you feel free to jump in and correct me if I'm on base here, that it's almost a polarity of maybe a reluctant optimism, or at least like a desire for that hero's journey going in. And over the course of those combat tours, everything kind of got turned around. Now, when you went in, you were kind of a bit brighter, maybe a bit. Just a different perspective going in.
Different perspective. It's a tale as old as combat. It's romanticism meets head on with reality.
Right.
You know what I mean? And reading about stories, watching movies, and then actually living it. Those are always going to be two very different things, and you can have one perspective going into combat, and you can always think, oh, I'm different. You know what I mean? Like, this won't affect me. But the stereotypes exist for a reason. You know what I mean? And it hits everybody different, and you don't know till you know.
Again, for everybody who hasn't already picked up their copy, Freaks of a Feather is the name of the book. It's from Latop Press here in Spokane, Washington. It's available on Amazon right now, and I know a lot of you guys already have picked up your copy. If you haven't, definitely get it, and get a bit of that perspective from somebody who walked it. If you don't mind, let me go ahead and have you just jump in and read a couple of excerpts from the book that touched you on a personal level. And as we were talking about before the program, it doesn't have to be something that's going to be visceral that other people could relate to, but parts of it that touch you personally for a particular reason.
I'll introduce this first piece. This comes after some really heavy shit that happened in the palm groves, and this is actually us confronting the enemy after we haven't seen them in weeks and months, because it's like fighting ghosts. So,
right.
I blink. Days have passed. A lifetime has passed. The sun shines through the palm groves again. My boots are soaked through with sweat. I'm not far from where the ID was buried. I stand next to the water. It flows past my feet, past the city, away from here, hopefully to somewhere better. They tell us there's a net stretched across the river at the end of the triad. It's a fishing net that has been thrown across a narrow section of the river to catch bodies. People are being murdered in the city. They're often headless bodies thrown into the river. I think of the net as I see a small boat in the middle of the river. At first, I think it is a mirage, another fabrication of my deceptive imagination. But the sound of a small boat motor vibrates the images into reality. A man sits at the back of the boat staring. Another man stands on the front of the boat. The painting of George Washington crossing the Delaware comes to mind. The American demigod who smote a king, unbothered by the Arctic chill lashing at his face. But there's no tricorn hat, only a black t-shirt, a mirrored pair of aviator sunglasses, and an AK-47 in his hands. It's strange to actually see a bad guy after fighting his ghost for weeks. I don't wait for permission. I drop instead to my belly, the cool dirt touching bare skin just above my belt line. I pull out the bipods and take proper aim. Huth kneels beside me, not needing to ask what comes next. A deep breath, an exhalation, a 7-round burst of machine gun fire. A man in black shirt twisting and falling into the water. Another trigger pull aimed at the dying air bubbles in the dark water. A concerned friend standing in the boat, confused and fearful for a friend. Another friend expertly pulling the trigger. A bullet in the heart. More air bubbles, more bullets. I want it to feel like justice or a reckoning, but that's only how it happens in stories. That's it.
How long had you been in country at that point?
You know, this was probably around 4 months, I would say, something around there. It all, I mean, that's the funny thing about it. It all just congeals into one, homogenous chunk of memory, and you got to kind of peel at it.
Right. That in particular, I mean, just the impression that you'd been fighting ghosts for a long time, and the twisted sort of relief you got from actually being able to confront one, to see one and put some lead into them and drop them. I mean, it was. Describe the thought process. Try to put it, and I know this is a tall order, but try to put it into layman's terms for somebody. Almost a dark kind of relief, that people in the free world aren't going to associate with what amounts to a human death.
Well, I mean, the one thing the Marine Corps is great at is making you want to kill.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been doing it for a couple hundred years now, and everything from the very first time you show up there, they give you a command, you scream, kill, you go do it. And, like any kind of tradesperson or anything like that, you want to be able to do your job, and at the end of the day, you can peel everything back, and a Marine's job is to kill the bad guy, or whoever they want him to.
You guys out there making the grass grow.
That's it. So, when you actually get to do it, there's no second, at least for me, there's no, oh, that's a human being. You know what I mean? Like, why is he on the water?
Right.
We were given the rules of engagement that anyone on the water dies, and, for, Marines at that state, you only question when they tell you can't kill someone.
Right.
When they tell you can't kill someone, it's like, roger that, good to go. And there's an old joke that someone was expecting to feel something after they shot someone, and they said, I just felt recoil, and when you're in it, that's about it.
Right. Now, you were a saw gunner, correct?
Yeah, so I was a machine gunner, and they didn't have enough machine guns. So they gave me a baby machine gun. So it was an all right piece of gear. He said to take care of it.
Right. Right on. And as such, like, what was your designated area, like, or your designated duty within the platoon? Like, what?
So I was always right behind the point man.
Right.
So my buddy Huth, he was the point man, and just follow him, make sure he had ass behind him. That was pretty much my gig. And then once the shit goes down, just get to a good spot and start hammering them. It's all about fire superiority.
Right on. Mm-hmm. A lot of pressure with that position.
You didn't feel it. You're just out there, kids having fun. You know what I mean? It sounds fucked up, but that's it. I mean, like, at the time, like, you're like, I would, how am I so lucky to be here? You know what I mean? Like, I'm so fortunate.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you're picking up all the shit that's hiding for you in the back of your brain, but in the moment, you're just thrilled to be there.
Yeah. Interactions with civilians. I mean, clearly, there's a difference in fighting an insurgency type of war than the old school warfare that a lot of the previous generations might have been used to. Mm-hmm. What was the biggest problem presented by dealing with civilian populace that may or may not have been in your corner from one minute to the next?
Well, it's just, I mean, you nailed it. Just like someone shoots at you in the tracksuit, they throw their AK over a wall, then they go into the marketplace. Everyone's wearing a tracksuit. They're gone. You know what I mean? You can't get them. You might even have saw them, but I mean, you can't. It's so hard to fight like that, And so you start, anytime you get hit, anytime you hear about people getting hit, it's really hard not to project that onto everyone in the city, because you're thinking to yourself, well, you might not have pulled the trigger, but you know where the guy went. You're not telling me, or there's no way you didn't see them put this IED in, So it's really hard to stop that mentality from creeping up your head, because it's they did, but also at the time it's hard to separate the fact that if they were to tell us, they would be murdered. You know what I mean? So as a young kid, I don't think I was intelligent enough or emotionally mature enough to like separate that, dichotomy out. I was just thinking in my head, I'm like, these people know, and they're as good as the enemy, So, I mean, I think that's where you run into where the bad stuff happens.
Not a whole lot of room for nuance and a bunch of young Marines.
No.
Man, how was again coping with those kind of rules of engagement and all of the subtleties and things like that? Obviously, it got you under like sky high pressure all the time. So I suppose it's probably understandable, even from a layman's perspective, how there would almost be relief. But in those long periods where you felt like you were fighting ghosts, go into a little more detail on that. Like, was it just that they were, subliming back into the civilian population? Were they just, making use of the terrain? How?
So, I mean, you get hit by an IED. I mean, unless there's a trigger man there, there's no one to fight, So
Right.
there's this carnage. And there's nothing to do afterwards other than secure the site. Right. There's no retribution. There's no feeling like it becomes like that they have all the power. You know what I mean? And they do. A defensive position like that, when they get to go in and out of the city, like it's they're in a pretty good spot tactically. But a lot of it too is they were really good at getting their dead out. Surprisingly well. They would just. You get into a big firefight and maybe you hadn't had clearance to actually leave the fob yet, right? You saw your bullets going into people, you saw them fall. By the time you get there to check, all that's left is, shell casings and bloody drag marks and, you know what I mean? Like some medical supplies or shirts or something like that. So you're never, it's rare that you're actually like seeing the person, you know what I mean? And then you're engaging the person and you're having a, like this conflict is coming to a head, and it's mainly just you walk around, you wait to get shot at, or you wait to get blown up, and you do that day in and day out. You might see someone, most likely you will not see anyone.
And you guys are kids.
Yeah, just children. And the way those, victim-initiated IEDs, I mean, no one even has to be around. They set it up. It's like a, fucking Bronco rotisserie, set it and forget it. They throw it out there, they leave. They don't have to be anywhere near the area. they just have to wait around the city and listen if their handiwork goes off, So that's what you're fighting, Similar to like the booby traps the guys were looking at in Vietnam, I think that's what's gouges up. I think it's much better to confront an enemy head on than it is to just be gouged at like that.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, this may be a little above the wheelhouse, but just for the sake of, I mean, the way that we're fighting wars now, do you feel like maybe the command and control complex is having some difficulty adjusting to the fact that mostly we're fighting insurgencies?
Yeah.
Have they taken steps to make the necessary adjustments to that, or are they still fighting, in their head, they're still fighting the big land war,
I think that there's definitely some of that going on. I think that as we pull out of these countries, they're ramping up for another big land war. You know what I mean? But which is ironic because we haven't been in one, and we keep going into these asymmetrical situations. So I'd like to believe that they're going to keep that sharp, but that, it's funny. They train us as infantrymen, Marine Corps infantrymen, which is basically America's shock troops. It's like, this is the mistreated pit bull that you take off the leash and you say, go, and then they're making us be police officers and, and like be census takers and that kind of stuff. And for us, I'm sure it's different for other deployments, but like we didn't get any of that training. Like we were just prepared for, because our instructors were like Fallujah vets,
right.
Which is, some of the most hardcore fighting the Marine Corps has ever been involved in. That's what we're prepared for. And to have us go and like, now you're in this kind of, you're still fighting a war, but you're also trying to become a police officer and a peacekeeper and all this kind of stuff. It's like, that's not what the Marine Corps is designed for, and I think you'd have to have some major, I mean, the Marines are doing it, they're getting it done, but yeah, it's asking a lot to be just to fill that complex of a role.
You get any guys buck at the thought of being put in that role?
Oh yeah, I mean, 100%. I mean, as the book, the title "Freaks of a Feather," like a certain type of person is attracted to the Marine Corps, infantry, especially during a time of war. Some people just want to fight. I mean, like that's like they want to fight. That's it. And now you got to take that guy who in a different situation would be exactly who you wanted next to you. Now maybe he's a liability.
Yeah. Liability in what sense?
As in,
just for clarification, yeah.
A liability as far as like I gotta keep an eye to make sure this guy's staying above board.
Right.
So because great grenades are indiscriminate. So you can't just be lobbing those things everywhere.
I kind of have that to whom it may concern thing on there. Yeah. Maybe another excerpt.
Yeah,
please.
Find this one.
Again, guys, Freaks of a Feather is the name of the book. We've been going over it for weeks here. We've been reading some excerpts. We're lucky enough to have Kacy Tellessen with us to relate some of these experiences and just kind of to get some firsthand perspective on all of this stuff. Let him give his own testimony because God knows I'm not up to the challenge.
So this last piece, this is my very last patrol on the first deployment. We had a kind of a dog mascot that we were feeding around our little combat outpost. So I'm just to set that up. All right. We patrolled back to the COP for the last time down the center of boardwalk. Just a few short months ago, doing so would have been unthinkable. Patrolling down the center of boardwalk was assured death, but now it was just another street. I could still feel the vibrations of violence through the pavement. The street still bore pockmarks from the bombs and bullets. There were fresh patches of new asphalt where the U.S. military had filled in IED craters. The sound of children laughing could be heard from a clearing in the palm groves where they played soccer. I started to feel like we had made a difference. 100 yards from the COP lay our mascot on his side. As I patrolled closer, I saw the blood pooled around his great head. His gold-flake eyes were closed and his tongue poked out from the front of his mouth. A small puddle of light brown mud at the tip of the still pink organ. The top of his head had been blown off, but still hung on by a small tab of flesh and fur. His brain was exposed, and the sun glistened off the gore that puddled in the open cavity. It was a picture of the war, I walked past him knowing that it would never be over. We would never leave this place. So one of our, we don't know who, no one ever copped to, but one of our guys shot the dog. Yeah, and we don't know what he was thinking, what was going on, but yeah, greased the dog before we got out of there. And this was a dog we'd all been feeding, and it was this great big, like, demonic looking hound. There was this huge dog looked out of place in the city, so we're like, oh, fuck yeah, let's feed this thing.
Right.
Good to have this thing around. And yeah, one of our guys greased him, and you never know why, but we had the way the deployment had turned out is it was peaceful when we left. It was a place where you had to sprint from block to block to not get shot when we first showed up. And by the end, you could be standing out there with no gear, smoking a cigarette, walking down the middle of the street. So it was quite the change.
Jesus. It's almost like what are the things, because like the dog, obviously when you're in a chaotic environment like that, it's something to establish even a tangential connection to your own humanity. You know what I mean? Like feeling, being able to feed a dog and take care of it, something like that, will allow you to remain human. What other kind of things would you guys do? What kind of rituals would you engage in just to reestablish that from time to time when you felt it slipping?
A lot of bootleg movies. We would, all gather around a laptop with shitty speakers and, like try to set up a little theater and watch a movie or something. I remember we had a bootleg version of 300 when it first came out.
Oh, nice.
And the dude was videotaping it, and he shipped it down for like 45 minutes and you couldn't see the screen. But we watched that thing about 105 times. Yeah, I read a lot. I kept reading the whole time. So, and I don't know if that's like the best move. You know what I mean? Because but it was escapism. You know what I mean?
What was your choice of books?
I read whatever I could get my hands on, really. But I did it, maybe unwisely. I read some like really heavy shit over there too, which I had never read. Like I read All Quiet on the Western Front over there.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, Jesus, maybe that was
yeah. Not the best choice.
Yeah, but it was over there.
Right.
So I'm like, I'm going to read it. And a part of me is like, I'm supposed to read these books, and like maybe I should, if I had the opportunity, I should read one of these in case, my ticket's next. So, but a lot of fantasy, of course, a lot of smut magazines around that joint too, of course. But yeah,
the necessity of
an
environment like that. Did you ever catch yourself revisiting the old classics that had driven you in the first place?
Yeah,
things like the Iliad.
I had my copy of the Iliad there with me, and take it out from time to time, read a section. It became more of like a talisman. You know what I mean? Like this, like kind of, which is funny because I'm not a religious person, but a deeply superstitious person. And so I would it felt good having it there with me. You know what I mean? It felt like, and it also felt like you're a young kid like that, and you want to be heavy. You know what I mean? Like you want to be this deep person, you know what I mean? So part of it's just like it looks fucking cool to pull out the Iliad and read it before patrol. You know what I mean? And a lot of us were pretty concerned with looking cool. So
right on. Well, not a whole lot of Nobel laureates, but no. So you're busting out the Iliad immediately. You got like credentials. You got like intellect credentials.
Exactly. Even just having the book.
Oh, he's that smart Marine.
Yeah, exactly.
When you did revisit it, outside of it being a talisman, did it ever kind of bring you back to why you were there in the first place, or was it just so far gone at that point that
it was? I wasn't too far gone when I was there at all. You know what I mean? Like when you're there, you're in it. You're like, this is fantastic. You know what I mean? Like I'm where I'm supposed to be.
Right.
Like I said, it's the stuff you're picking up. It's like a garbage bin in your brain. You keep just throwing stuff in there and it's waiting for you, festering in the back of your mind. But yeah, I just, you'd read it, and we're still at that age where it's, you're reading war porn basically, same reason why you watch war movies and that kind of stuff too. Like it was just, reaffirming why I was there.
Right.
It wouldn't become later until you get a little older and maybe your brain finishes developing, where you're kind of like, wait a second, when they're talking about lopping somebody's limb off, you know what I mean, or hacking somebody's head off, they don't show you what happens after that.
Right.
You know what I mean? What happens the guys that go pick up the battlefield and like, like they never talk about that kind of stuff. But they never talk about. I mean, they're basically in the Iliad. They're covering the aristocracy, fighting each other, not the peasant spearmen. You know what I mean?
Right.
Which is what we are.
Yeah. Do you find the same disconnect? Again, maybe just in the coverage, not just in the coverage of the war, but in the treatment of the war, because that's an important distinction that you draw about covering the aristocracy rather than the spearmen themselves. That too much of the attention gets focused on the officer class, and nobody really pays attention to the grunts. I mean, obviously that's a thing.
Yeah, 100%.
How did it affect you personally?
Well, there's a separation. You know what I mean? And I know that there's a lot of fantastic officers in the Marine Corps, and I never made that connection with any of the officers, really, So it was, it's a very much an us them thing, you know what I mean? And it's, there's a saying that's, E comes before O in the alphabet, and that's a lot of us stuck to that, And well, I mean, rightfully so. You want the more educated, more articulate people talking to the press. I don't think me at 19, fresh off the battlefield, you want me on the mic.
I might.
Yeah.
I might. But the general public.
PR. Yeah.
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, do you think that maybe increases the disconnect, like with, and eventually we're going to get here, but like with what you're seeing with the nature of our withdrawal right now, do you think that maybe that distinction, maybe that division, that polarity between the two, that dichotomy, you think that maybe that makes it worse with regard to the disconnect that the officer class has, like with what we're dealing with in Afghanistan right now with withdrawal? Do you think maybe they should spend more time talking to the grunts to find out what the fuck's actually going on?
Well, I think I don't want to sound conceited, but I think that's why books like this are important. You know what I mean? Because this is what kids are doing. And this is not we went out and pacified the village. You know what I mean? Like this is like what the guys on the ground are doing, and the gals too now.
Yeah.
I think that when most of the coverage of the war, as it drug on, we all got turned into numbers. And it's much easier to deal with 14 dead Marines or 13 dead Marines or 100 dead Marines than it is for Jerry. You know what I mean? Bill, Kacy. You know what I mean? All these people. That's a huge disconnect, and I think that's why this last event in Afghanistan is impacted, because it was so in your face, and with this social media, we had access to these people's lives instantly. We had their Instagrams or Facebooks, and it was so much easier to click on them and see like, oh, this was a kid, this is a real person, with moms and dads, brothers and sisters. And so this was the first time, like I mean, I know some Marines and other veterans I know are like pissed off that this is getting so much coverage when, they were in blasted, took out 6 and never made the news. But this was the first time where and maybe the eyeballs should have been, more tightly focused on us when we were over there. But this was, I mean, everyone's on the edge of their seat watching this evacuation. And then to have this happen, like this was like the most visceral and, more eyes on this event than just about anything we ever went through, and I think that's why it's gutting a lot of people, is because you can see, and we're already getting responses from the families, and it's just when you stop thinking about Marines and you start thinking about kids, and all these kids that died, they all volunteered during a time of war, which is different than our entire history. You know what I mean? So certainly in recent conflicts where we've had to start the draft and that kind of stuff, these are all kids that for the most part wanted to do the right thing, and they were like I was. They were I'm sure most of them were actually better human beings than I am, but they were.
I don't know, man. I'm going out with you.
But they were just, I mean, they wanted to do the right thing, and then they kind of got they got led to the slaughter by a decision made at the very top without implications of, okay, we're at the top, what does that do to the grunt at the bottom?
Yeah.
It's the saying, shit rolls downhill. And this was about the biggest example of shit rolling downhill that I think I've ever seen.
It's the old Gunny Hardman line, Marines die, that's why we're here. Mm-hmm. But just to but I think you definitely made an accurate observation with regard to the social media, like putting it out there, because now, like Stalin said, one death is a tragedy, 100 deaths is a statistic, but now every one of those 100 deaths that would ordinarily be a statistic, now it's a tragedy because you have
moments
access
before
to the
they
faces.
died, that one lady that died, she had posted she has the greatest job on earth,
holding the child.
Yeah, and
I remember.
So if that's not the biggest punch in the gut you've ever felt, it's crazy. And that's a whole different thing. Like I was never around any female Marines dying or anything like that. It's just a whole different Marine Corps now, and that gets me even more. I don't know if it should or not, but it does.
Well, I mean, it's human reaction. It's visceral. Let me ask you. We might get into some potentially moderately uncomfortable territory here. I know you and your delicate sensibilities and all that. So, but with regard to that, even with that hero's journey that you wanted to go on in the background of reading the Iliad and wanted to do something great with your life, if you were in a position now, seeing what had just happened with the dereliction of command responsibility in Afghanistan, how those people were left to die, do you think it would have shook you at all? On a personal level, would it have made you reconsider, or were you just that fucking driven?
Yeah, it wouldn't have made a difference.
Wouldn't have made a difference.
Not
Not for you.
No, the reality, I think, of a lot of Marines too. I think it's different for branches, but the best way I've heard it summed up is that the Army and the Navy ran like traditional militaries. The Air Force is a corporation, and the Marine Corps is a cult. And, that's, I mean, it wouldn't have mattered what the mission was at that time in my life. I wanted a war, and if I'm being honest, I wouldn't have cared, The only thing I would have thought was like, I wish I would have been there at that moment. Like that's what I was thinking when Fallujah was happening. I was like, I'm going to miss it, So, and that's the kind of people the Marine Corps is attracting.
Right. It's difficult for a lot of people to understand because, most people don't want to get into a conflict with their barista,
Yeah.
And you got guys looking out, just looking to put themselves in the middle of some trigger time, getting fucking shot at. I mean, that's really hard for civilians to get their head around. And no reluctance at any point. At any point during the entire time in country, did any of that fade?
Not the first deployment.
Yeah.
No. The second deployment, though, when I started to see more of we're just buying off the enemy thing, like that's when I really started to like question things.
And when you're saying buying off the enemy, you want to
so
expand on that a little bit.
At least from our perspective, what we were seeing was that instead of defeating the enemy, we'd started paying them, and a lot of the enemy would become the police officers, and they went in the army and that kind of stuff. So you still have this tension, and I'm standing across from guys that could have very well been trying to kill me in 2006, 2007, but now they've got a police officer's uniform on, and they're standing there smoking cigarettes. And so you send guys like me back there, and we're looking at them, and we're thinking, I want to kill you. You know what I mean? You want to kill me. This is just all bullshit, what we're doing here. And, we got, our battalion got hit with, I won't get too deep into it, but our battalion got hit with a suicide bomber. And we kind of knew who was involved, and they wouldn't let us go get him, And so that I was like, fuck this, like this, I could put up with a lot of shit, to be a Marine. That was such a hard pill for me to swallow, that we got bloodied up like that. And our hands got tied behind. I mean, not only did our hands get tied, like they took us out of the situation, I think, because they knew something was going to happen. So that at that time, they started pulling us all back into the big bases, because initially they treated us like the savages that we are, and they just kick us out into the countryside to go take over and build up these fighting positions out there. But I think they knew the storm was coming, and they knew that a lot of us could not swallow what was going on. So they brought us all back into the big bases, and they started phasing us out.
So they're aware of how demoralizing it is once you guys realize that this is all like smoke and mirrors.
Yeah, I think so.
And again, getting back into some potentially uncomfortable stuff on a more recent level, do you think maybe a whole lot of that going on with Afghanistan? Do you think maybe it's probably a good thing that we've at least got our Marines completely out of there now?
I don't know.
Instead of having,
it's hard for me to say. A lot of this shit's way above my pay grade.
Yeah. Well, and I don't mean from the standpoint of, that I'm glad we got them all out and all this other kind of thing, because, on a personal level, I'm thinking maybe a little contingency force, because we kept 2,500 there without incident for months beforehand. But the ones that are still going to be there, I mean, you think that was demoralizing in particularly the last 6 or 7 months.
I don't know how you could watch that and not be demoralized,
Right.
I mean, because one of the striking things, at least from the images I saw, was the Marines the danger that the Marines had to put themselves in because of the mission they were given. They had no option. I mean, I've heard people talking shit about how they were conducting the operation, but they had no other options. They had to be right up there next to the people. And at least when I was in, I mean, I don't know how things change, but you never let someone get that close to you, and you always have standoff distance. And these guys were they were standing shoulder to shoulder to block this, flow of humanity. And they had to know, because there were some salty guys there too. I mean, one of the guys that died had been in for 12 years or something like that. I mean, it's a salt dog that who knows how many deployments he'd been on. He had to know, because all of us at home, watching, we were like, when's the suicide bomb going off? Because you never let people get that close. And they had a mission to do, and I'm sure they knew that it was fucked. And they just put themselves in that position, And I don't give a shit what anybody says. Those Marines saving those babies, you know what I mean? If that doesn't give you some kind of an emotional response, I don't know what will. And then to think that those are the same guys. I mean, they're putting themselves in that position where it's almost, something's going to happen. You know what I mean? I'm sure some of them will be able to shut it off for a while, but the tension of knowing that that's going to happen, that's heavy, and they went out there and did it anyways. So, I mean,
it's the kind of people they are.
Yeah.
It's the kind of person that you were.
Yeah. I was more of a blood and guts guy when I first got there, to be completely honest. But I like to believe I would have done the same thing.
Part of the Semper Fi cult.
That's what you're saying.
I like it. So now that your testimony is out to the world, you're a little surprised at the amount of accolades you've been getting on go, because there were some very big people. Very maybe not important to the regular grazer contingent, but in your true story, one of the things that Kacy and I bonded over when we first met was he pointed out that I was the only non-Marine that ever read Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman's work that he knew of. But you got some guys in that realm that are really, really fucking singing your praises behind this, man. I mean, how did that feel?
One of the most meaningful ones was Johnny Clark, who wrote Guns Up,
right.
Which is, I mean, there's an actual machine gun Bible of all the data and stuff.
Yeah.
But the unofficial machine gun Bible is Guns Up.
Yeah.
So, I mean, machine gunners read it it was just mandatory reading.
Right.
I read it before I got in, and the guy's just larger than life. And I sent him a copy. He didn't know me. All he knew was I was a Marine machine gunner. He's like, yeah, I'll read it. No problem.
Yeah.
And then he sends me back a message. He's like, hey, you can actually write. This is pretty good. Yeah. So that I just meant anytime Marine reads it, or any kind of combat vet reads it, is like, hey man, this is real shit.
Yeah.
That's about as high a praise I can get. I haven't shared it yet, but I got a signed book from General Mattis was sent to me, and yeah, he was just said, hey, thanks for writing this. This is good to go. And one of my friends analogized it to a basketball player getting a signed basketball from Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
So, it was overwhelming, really.
Yeah. Some of us have been telling you for a while you had
a
gift.
I don't believe it.
Some of us have been preaching that for a minute. I mean, I just remember when you got the first feature in the New York Times, which again, we always have to qualify that we are not advocating for the New York Times. But when they're featuring your literary work, that's pretty big fucking kudos, man.
That was a win.
Yeah,
that was a win. You're just like, are you sure?
Yeah. You guys are kidding, right?
Yeah, exactly. I thought it was maybe my brother that hacked somebody's email. Like, yeah, we're going to publish it in the New York Times.
Thought you were getting punked, and then you realized you're not famous yet. So, But man, I mean, there's going to be the fame coming. There's definitely the accolades have already arrived. Like all these people that have taken notice and that have written the reviews and everything. I'm looking forward to the second edition just to see how many badasses will do a fucking preface on it. You know what I mean? But God, man, the accolades, and was there for the reading when you did the opening, and your creative writing instructor was there. And we had a long conversation.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we got to have a long conversation about you. And she was of the same opinion that I was, and like she recognized that gift probably a hell of a lot sooner than you did. Tell me and tell the folks at home a little bit about how that came about, because as you've said, quote unquote, this thing started off basically as a long suicide note, and then I mean now I should point out you're pursuing your career in law, which is pretty fucking huge in its own right. But this departure into the creative writing realm, again, for a book that started out just as what you, again, your own words, one big suicide note, and now to reach this and going through her and having that gift developed with a little bit of how did that come about, and what was that like establishing the dynamic between you and her?
So it was, I had the GI Bill, and I was kind of looking at going to school as like a second job just to support the family, because I knew if I went, I would get like $1,400 extra bucks a month.
Right.
I'm looking at the list of all this stuff. I'm like, I like writing. I'm into it now. I like reading. Let's do this. It was either that or maybe I was going to get a history degree. And I went in her class, and she was my intro to creative writing professor.
Yeah.
And you're in there with these, and I don't want to talk shit, but you're in there with a lot of these kids, and they're trying to like, and it's not their fault, but they're trying to like write about their lives, and they haven't really lived anything yet,
right.
And so that was at that, rage monster, phase of my life. So I had to just white knuckle it through these classes most of the time. Like, honestly, I would have to like grab the bottom of the desk and squeeze onto the fucking metal bars to keep from saying something. So I just, and as she said too, I just remained quiet for most of it. But there was one particular thing that she had us do every week, which was, she called the sandbox, another irony, that it was just basically, she would give us a prompt, and it was ungraded. You did whatever you wanted, and in my perspective, I was thinking like, okay, well, I have to do this anyways. I'm going to make the best possible shit that I can.
Right.
So, or some people would just like squirt out a paragraph of just nonsense, I would write something, and then I'd do 3 or 4 different drafts on it and try to make this thing as, one, because I respected her, and I wanted to show her respect by turning in something worthy of, her eyes. And it just started from there. And I just started writing some heavy shit immediately, and it was
product of your experience.
Yeah.
That's where it's coming from.
And it was almost uncomfortable in the classroom, because like, I don't know if it was skill so much if it was effort, like I was putting in far more effort than everybody else was. And I think she saw that immediately, and she knows writing, and she knows that you don't get something like that on the first draft. So she knows that I was, working hard at this, and she saw that, and she was willing to, like, she opened up her library to me. Basically, the class was basically, you read a book every week, you discuss it, and then you write a piece of your own. So she would give me a book for that assignment, and then she would like basically assign me 2 other books to read. And it just became, I think good writing is like making sausage, like you throw all these books and your life experience into the grinder,
right?
And what comes out is hopefully a, quality piece of art.
Definitely achieve that with this one, man. Definitely achieve that with this one. So, closing thoughts going forward, now that you have established the proper accolades, now that you at least reluctantly, because again, that humility is genuine, now that you've at least reluctantly had to accept that, holy shit, you're pretty fucking gifted, and this is a pretty powerful contribution. What do you want out of the book going forward? What would be, if you could just have a wish list of what this book would ultimately do for young guys thinking about getting into the Corps, for young guys that are in the Corps right now, guys that maybe are out in the shit doing some fucking trigger time. What would you want the what would you want the resounding effect and the legacy of this book to be going forward?
You like to think they would make kids make better decisions, but I know that's not going to happen.
Didn't work for you.
No, I used to watch Platoon and get pumped up,
right.
Which is fucked up in its own right. But I would like it to be more something for the guys that come back, the guys that are struggling with processing just what the fuck just happened to them, maybe just letting a couple guys and gals know that like it's okay to be fucked up, like you're not broken, you know what I mean, or anything like that, and that even if you're going through peaks and valleys in your life and you're going to get in some dark valleys, that it's not the end, it's not the end, and there's different perspectives on looking on why you should keep yourself alive. I don't know how many are valid or how many make rational sense, but to me, I feel like I owe the guys that didn't come back a debt because I'm here, and another reason is I don't want to give those people the satisfaction of knowing that I took my own life. So like the people we're fighting over there, it's like you don't get to win.
Yeah.
I mean, at
couldn't take me over there. We don't. I'll do the work for you.
Exactly. And right. I mean, real uncomfortable thing is that it's how easy you can get in those mindsets, and I think I would like it to be some kind of maybe a warning for people that like you can be a bad motherfucker, but this stuff can still grab you, and it grabs you quick, and before you know it, the gun's in your hand, and you got to steel yourself against it.
Right. You got an amazing family that have been very, very supportive through this entire process. And like you said at the beginning of the interview, you were on the ragged edges there for a minute. Mm-hmm. You feel thankful for the cathartic nature of this in the way that it helped.
Yeah, and I mean, anyone that's dealing with any kind of trauma, doesn't have to be combat related or anything like that. Like, one of the things I would urge you to do is, even if it's only for your eyeballs, just write it down in a narrative form.
Yeah.
Sometimes these words are bouncing off your head, and these images and these experiences are just ricocheting off, and you can't make sense of them. Yeah. And maybe some of them, they can't ever be made sense of. But if you put it down in a linear narrative form, you can look at it as such, and you can be like, okay, this happened to me, but this is just a story. And I can start to make sense of this, and I can see that this is just a little story. This doesn't consume me.
Right.
So I would urge people to write, even just journaling, on their own. I would really urge people to do that.
And even if it is just a story, it doesn't have to be the final chapter in the story. Mm-hmm. And this book stands as a testament to that. This is a fantastic thing you've done here, brother. I mean, fantastic thing. And on a personal level, I'm happy that everybody else is finally getting to see the fucking gift that you have, that I've been, on and on about for a long fucking time now. And again, guys, Freaks of a Feather, Latop Press out of Spokane, Washington. Kacy Tellessen, you planning on doing any like live signings or anything?
Dude,
locally,
right now, law school is the all-consuming creature in my life.
And what's the long-term goal with the legal thing?
I'm tired of being poor. I'd like a good job, something that stimulates the brain and earns some money.
Right on. That's as good a justification as any, man. So, how much further you have to go in law school?
So I'm just at the beginning of my second year, so basically 2 more years.
Right on. Mm-hmm. So 2 more years of a grind. That's
or I'll stroke out and I won't have to worry about it.
Well, it's also possible. I think your chances are probably better in law school because nobody's taking shots at your head or leaving bombs by the side of the road. So there's that. Bit of a come down.
Yeah, it really is.
What was the old? What was the line? The animal mother. He's a fine human being. We just got to find somebody to throw hand grenades at him for the rest of his life. But man, I'm really proud of everything that you've accomplished, man, and I'm really glad that we were able to get you on before I take off over to Oregon.
Thanks, Bart. I appreciate it, man.
It's just guys, again, if you have not got your copy yet, get on it. What the fuck are you waiting on? We've been reading excerpts, and now I actually got him on, and he got to read some shit to you. You got to hear his fucking testimony for yourself. What are you waiting on? Pick up a fucking copy of the book. Do it now. Yes, I'm talking to you. I'm looking at you, right? Yes, you, motherfucker. Go get the copy right now. But anyway, guys, Kacy Tellessen, Marine Combat Vet. The book, again, Freaks of a Feather from Latop Press in Spokane, Washington. Available on Amazon right now. And thanks for being the very first guest we've ever actually had on the sermon, man.
One of the great honors of my life.
Don't say that. Don't say that. Don't say that because you're going to wind up on a list of known associates when I finally have my inevitable meltdown. But we're going to close with a little clutch, as usual. Our outro music, Fortunate Son. It should be all too familiar to you. Anyway, got a lot of background with that. Happy to have Kacy Tellessen on, guys, and we'll be back at you next week with a little more rant and raving. Get the copy of the book, guys. Don't make me fucking stalk you because I'm not above it. You should be aware of this by now. You guys keep it all together. Remember the primary directives, guys. The primary directives. Be the signal, not the noise. Be the light in a world full of darkness and be that strength in a world full of weakness. I am the Reverend. That is the gospel. Kacy Tellessen on board with us, man. Glad you guys made it out. We will definitely see you next Sunday, man. Thanks for making it out. Any closing words for the guys?
Just keep going.
Keep going. Head down, chin down, head up. Keep moving fucking forward. Glad you guys made it out. Thank you. See you next Sunday. Peace.